Let me tell you what my deep research and basically vision is.
I hope there's Bigfoot. I don't think there is.
I'm not telling you nothing.
The aliens won't let it happen. Happening now, breaking.
Bernie Sanders is angry.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.
What are the tips? Give me some tips on how to work with Wes Anderson.
Be ready to speak very fast and very clearly, because that's definitely one key thing.
I will only tell the truth.
Until you and 6 kids you barely know in wet bathing suits have surrounded 9 chimpanzees outside of a Wendy's. You probably really don't know yourself, okay?
Yep. And we back.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to your new favorite podcast and the best in political, sports, and paranormal news coverage. I'm your host, Wes Anderson, and this is In the Shed. This is episode 76, so whether you're coming back for more or finding us for the first time this week, hey, thanks for tuning in. It is early morning, August 21st, and I'm in the shed in the backyard of my home in Alabama. Also, I can hang out with you tools and talk about the latest headlines, stories, and rumors in the world of politics, sports, and the paranormal. Our guest this morning is host of a national sports show, a commentator, a scholar, and a gentleman. One of the best things going in college football coverage today, host of Crain Company, Jake Craine. Jake, thanks for joining us in the shed today.
Oh man, it's great to be on with you. This is one of the few times where I'm cool with being locked in a shed with another dude.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. Before we get into talking about college football, for those of our listeners who may not be aware, share a little bit about who you are and about your show with us.
Yeah, well, I was born November 2nd. No, I'm just kidding. Well, look, man, I'm from Lee County. I grew up in SEC country. My father played in the SEC, coached in the SEC. I played in the Sun Belt, coached college football for over a decade, 7 years at the Division I level. COVID hit. Was trying to waste some time before I went back up, and where I was coaching in Montana, I was actually interviewing for the DC job, and just started messing around with the microphone, and it turned into the show we have, Crain Company, Crain and Company. We're almost at 150,000 subs on YouTube. We're the sports show for the Daily Wire, but we don't get political. We're just trying to hit bets and help our audience win the water cooler, as we say. And we go live 2 to 3:30 p.m. Central each weekday. We have live calls, a live chat, and my co-host, my brother, played with Austin Eckler at Western Colorado. Our other host, David Cohn, played quarterback at Michigan. And man, I tell you what, it's been a ton of fun. We've got a great reception from it. We break it down. We try and get into the nitty gritty, but not too deep where people can't understand. So whether it's college football, whether it's NFL, whether it's fantasy, whether it's recruiting, which for a lot of people recruiting is a fantasy, we try and cover it.
That's awesome. It's a great show, man. It's been an absolutely meteoric rise. We've got 34 subscribers on YouTube, so the fact that you're on this show.
Man, that's where it starts. And the thing, Wes, is that's why I'm always down to go on any show, whether it's starting, whether it's established, from Kubelik and McElroy to in the shed with Wes that just started. Man, it's I love the sports in general, and it's done so much for me personally and professionally that you can't forget where you came from, and who knows, you can look up in 2 years and all of a sudden that shed turns into a penthouse.
Hey, that's the goal right there. That's the goal. Well, I appreciate that. Let's jump into some college football talk this morning. This is our college football preview show. Jake, let's start with conference realignment. It was a big offseason with Texas and Oklahoma officially moving to the SEC, the implosion of the Pac-12 with teams landing in the Big Ten, Big 12, ACC, Oregon State and Washington State being left out in the cold, and then all the dominoes that fell afterward. What teams are you most excited to see in their new conference this year, and are we done with conference realignment anytime soon?
Well, look, the easy answer, right, is Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC. That's probably the most exciting, followed closely behind Oregon, Washington, UCLA, and USC go into the Big Ten. But to me, I think it's some of the other ones that I find the most interesting. And if you looked at our ACC predictions yesterday, a lot of people were surprised where I had SMU, who's going to be new in the Atlantic Coast Conference. I think they're going to have a chance to come in and really make some noise. The thing I can tell you is geography obviously doesn't matter anymore because Stanford and Cal, campuses that are located in Palo Alto and Berkeley, California, are now in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Although you make sense of that, but it makes about as much sense as the Big Ten having, 16 teams and the Big 12 having 18 teams or whatever it is. It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense anymore. But I tell you, another one that I find interesting is I got Utah winning the Big 12. When I look at the Utes and the way they're able to rise up in the Pac-12 through physicality, kind of a similar way that Oklahoma State did it or has done it in the Big 12, I think they have a chance to really make some noise in this first year. So I don't think we're done. To be honest with you, I don't even know if it's going to be conference realignment with teams. It may just be conferences going away and turning into one big super league that's split into two divisions. That's where I think we're headed.
Wow.
But as far as the movement we had last year, Oregon's got a really good chance to win the Big Ten. The matchups are going to be fascinating. And there are a lot of people that said, oh, well, with this conference realignment and all this stuff, we're going to lose some of these peripheral rivalries. And not lose them, but they only get played, once every 3 to 4 years, whatever it is. The truest point to me, though, is that I think it's going to actually create some rivalries that we never thought could have been created. I look at the Tennessee-Oklahoma game, right, where Josh Heupel, the national championship winning quarterback at Oklahoma, is now the head coach at Tennessee. You look at teams like Florida and Texas. I'm interested to see the old Isaac Newton. I think you said this again. You did say I was a scholar, so I need to sound like it. Mass can neither be created nor destroyed, and for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Well, I think in this case, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. We're going to have some rivalries that end up being created out of this instead of one's just disappearing for all time.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I see what you did there in talking about Utah as a team that is rising, with Cam Rising returning to their lineup this year. That was well done.
The Dark Knight.
Yeah,
Thank you, the Dark Knight.
I really like. I want to see UCF in the Big 12. I think that's a really interesting move for them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, without a doubt. Well, and look, I think them getting KJ Jefferson, talking about Gus, getting KJ Jefferson this offseason was a lot bigger coup than what people think. As far as what they're going to do this year, I got him at 8-4. We did our Big 12 predictions on Monday. I'm still worried about the defense. They had to go to the transfer portal and basically Frankenstein the defense. And while I think they're going to be better, I still don't think they have a ton of depth. Now, offensively, Gus is kind of back in his bag. Old Gus is back. It's like he sat down and had a conversation with Dr. Rick or something. And now, looking at that offense with Harvey at running back, who's really nice. They got a transfer from Toledo that's a really good player. And then outside, they returned some guys, including former Auburn wide receiver Kobe Hudson, that should have a big year. So I think they're a good fit. I tell you, man, watch out down the road as well for Houston in the Big 12. I recruited that city. I recruited that state. Willie Fritz beat us upside down twice when I was at South Alabama and he was at Georgia Southern. The dude can just flat out coach.
He's a heck of a coach, no doubt about that. Let's jump into some transfer portal and NIL, two things that have transformed the game of college football as we knew it and still are, really. When it comes to transfer portal and NIL, are we going to see any type of regulations moving forward that kind of even things out across the board?
Well, not right now. You bring anything against the players, you're going to lose in court. What I think is going to end up happening, and maybe I'm trying to will it, and I'm trying to hope this happens, is that whenever we do move to this super league, to this breakaway league, whether it's 60 teams split into 4 divisions or whatever, what I'm hoping is that for you to play in this super league, all right, or let's just call it the power league, as opposed to playing in the group of 5 league, when you sign that scholarship paper, right, that NLI, it says you are agreeing fully to participate in our guidelines and structure for NIL/player compensation and transfer portal. Just like I sign a contract when I go, re-sign with our company, or you sign a contract when you sign with your company, or if you're a contractor or whatever, and that locks you into following those rules. And if you don't want to follow those rules, then excuse my language, but your ass just won't play in the Super League, or you can go play in the Group of 5 and do all the complaining you want. So that's what I'm hoping buttons it up, what makes it uniform. And listen, I want a transfer portal, Wes, but I think we have to have rules, right? It can't just be you can go whenever, wherever, however you want. To me, you should be able to transfer outside of your conference, right? I don't like being able to transfer from LSU to Arkansas without a penalty. You get one of those. So if you want to go from LSU to Utah, great. If you want to go from USC to Michigan, or well, not anymore, from USC to Texas, then great. The only exception I have where you can go wherever you want, even if you've transferred one time or it's within the same conference, is if your head coach leaves for any reason, whether he's fired, whether he resigns, whether he takes a job in the NFL, not the defensive coordinator, not the quarterback coach, but if the head coach leaves, you should be able to have a year to go wherever you want. And it can be that easy. We can keep grad transfers. That's fine. If you want to move up a level, I think you should get one free one of those, just like if you want to go from North Dakota State, right, to UCLA, you don't have to sit out a year as opposed to the past where you did, unless you were moving down, and then you didn't have to sit out a year. So that's my long way of saying hopefully this new Super League's got a better constitution.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement. I mean, I think that, look, coaches can go from one school to another anytime they want. They don't honor their contracts. I think players should be able to transfer. Regular students are able to transfer. Why not student athletes, quote unquote? I'm in favor of NIL. I've never understood why players could not in the past benefit on their own name, their own likeness, their own image that they have added worth to and value to. But I think I agree. We've got to have some kind of common sense reform, something across the board that kind of reins this thing in.
Wes, to me, like when the coach things, the coach just signed a contract, and there's a lot of cases where once a coach has success, or if he's a coach that the school feels lucky to get, just like any contract, he's going to put leverage and clauses into that contract that are beneficial to him. But it's not like you can just halfway through the year decide to leave one place and go to the other and not have to pay a price, or there be some type of money repaid or some type of penalty for 80% of coaches in their contract. That's why I want the contract the players to sign to play in this Super League for that scholarship paper, to be able to have all the same clauses and not be able to be reworked and stuff like that. And I think it should be that way for coaches. But as far as NIL, where we missed the boat, and it'd be so hypocritical for me to sit here and say, oh, well, hey, I want to make money off my name, image, and likeness, but the guy who runs the 4.4 and can jump 43 inches and catch a ball and make it look like a tennis ball, he shouldn't be paid for his name, image, and likeness. But the deal was supposed to be, if Dr. Pepper wants to do a deal with Bryce Young, then Dr. Pepper's people reach out to Bryce Young's people, and they do a deal. Where it got miscombobulated is we replaced the NCAA as the middleman with these collectives as the middleman.
Right.
And now they're just putting all this money in the pot, and the school's divvying it out. Well, that's fine if the donors just want to do an NIL deal with the school. That's great, but not individual NIL money should go into that and be dispersed. That's where I think we totally missed the boat on this.
Yeah, and I think that's a good place to draw the line. I think player contracts is a great idea. The collectives have definitely spun out of control. And as a former D3 athlete with a vertical leap of 36 inches, I would have loved to have made even $1 in college.
36 inches. I mean, if you're jumping 36, then I was really just doing a horizontal.
I could put it over the rim at one point. Not
there
anymore.
Not
anymore.
Go. Look, I was your typical 6'1.5", 6'2" guard. I'm gonna dish it. I'm gonna shoot when I'm open, but set other people up to play above the rim.
There you go. Well, who do you think, if you're looking across the landscape of college football when it comes to transfer portal this offseason, if you had to pick one impact transfer for all teams, all 128 or however many teams there are these days, who is the one transfer that you think will have the biggest impact on his new team?
Man, I think it's a race in between probably Dylan Gabriel and Cam Ward. Some people will say Will Howard. I think Will Howard's impact is just trying not to drive the car into the wall during the race.
Right.
When I look at Dylan Gabriel, I think he fits what Will Stein does offensively to a T. He can get the ball out quick. He's a guy you can put on the move. He can throw off platform. He's just got to take care of himself when he does run. And that team he has around him with that offensive line, with them adding Evan Stewart from Texas A&M, bringing back a lot of their production outside, and then defensively what Dan not only is returning, but what he is bringing in through the transfer portal. I think that Oregon team is ready to go. And then Cam Ward, I think he's gonna dummy-proof Miami for Mario Cristobal. I mean, this is a guy that is going to be really hard for him to ruin. Number one, he's pretty old, and he is who he is. And number two, I think Mario is going to be really hands-off with the offense this year and not try and micromanage everything to the point where he slows it down. I said yesterday on the show, sometimes the best way to lead the way is to somewhat get out of the way.
Right.
And I think that's what Mario is going to, do a little bit this year with Miami. And I tell you, Cam, he can really spin it, even though I've got him winning the ACC. I think they lose to Florida week 1.
And I would not be surprised by that at all. I really wouldn't. Cam Ward was the quarterback, so I root for a couple of teams. I'm equally an Auburn and Kentucky football and basketball fan. I had my father grew up an Auburn fan. I had family that grew up in Kentucky, so I root for those teams. And then secondarily, I root for Colorado. I spent a summer out there in college. It's not a Deion thing, although I like Coach Prime. And then, of course, how can you be in Alabama and not root for like Troy in South Alabama? I wanted Cam Ward at Auburn really badly in the offseason.
I think he was the number one quarterback in the portal once Dylan decided to go to Oregon. I think it was kind of a tight race between those two. And he, and I agree with you. I think he could have transformed, what Auburn did in the passing game. I am really interested, though, to see Peyton Thorne in year 2 in the RPO system.
Yeah.
Coming from Michigan State, he was a guy who was true drop back, pro-style offense, comes to Auburn, kind of vanilla with what they were able to do because they were so one-dimensional with the pass game. What I'm hoping is the additions of personnel on the outside and year 2 in an RPO system, he's going to be more comfortable. His decision-making is going to be better when it comes down to the zone read and the RPO, when to pull it, when to give it, when to spit it. So I'm interested to see Peyton in year 2 with more weapons around him, but I'd still trade for Cam Ward right now if you gave me that offer.
Absolutely, and I agree. I think but behind Dylan Gabriel was the best quarterback in the transfer portal. To me, the more interesting question: Dylan Gabriel at Oregon and Cam Ward at Miami are kind of a given. Which of these 3 transfer quarterbacks will have the biggest impact on his team? Will it be Riley Leonard at Notre Dame, Will Howard at Ohio State, or Grayson McCall at North Carolina State?
Oh, man, that's a great question. Well, first, I just hope Grayson stays healthy.
Absolutely.
That's been his biggest thing. I'm interested to see him in a new system. David Cohn was talking about this on our show yesterday. He fit what Jamie Chadwell wanted to do really, really well. This is kind of a little bit of a different flavor of ice cream. When I'm looking at what Riley brings to Notre Dame, I do think he's the best of the 3. I think Will obviously has the best team. But Notre Dame's funny this year. They're kind of the inverse of last year. Last year, they were really good up front. Even with Sam Hartman, they wanted to be downhill, play good defense. They had some decent quick game. The play action was there because they were able to run the ball pretty well. Well, this Notre Dame team lost both their tackles to the NFL, Joe Alt and Blake Fisher, and they lost their stud phenom, their up-and-comer at left tackle, Charles Jagaza, to start off fall camp, which is unfortunate for him. So I'm going to go Riley. I don't have Notre Dame making the playoff.
Shots fired.
Yeah, it just I got them at 9-3. I think they lose at A&M. I think they lose at USC late in the year, and I think they lose at Georgia Tech.
Well, that would not get it done as far as playoffs go. I really do want to see Grayson McCall in a new system, and I hope that he does stay healthy. I always enjoyed what he did at Coastal Carolina. Thought that he was a phenomenal player there. The transfer that I thought you might mention that you didn't as far as the biggest impact is former Ole Miss running back Quinshon Judkins.
Yeah, the quarterback just has so much more. You touch the ball every snap. Quinshon, you can make a legitimate case. He's the best running back in the country, and that mix of him and Travion Henderson at Ohio State is going to be deadly with that offensive line. He's going to have a big impact, but it's hard to out-impact the quarterback. I mean, even he's got to take the snap and hand it off to you unless you're going to go Wildcat 24/7. And I think I must have missed the day that Eddie Graham took the OC job at Ohio State because I don't see that happening.
and Ohio State fans should be thankful for that, in my estimation.
Yes.
Well, let's do this, Jake. Let's go rapid fire through some of the major conferences. I'll give you a conference. You tell us who you think wins the conference, who is a contender, and who is a team to watch that might surprise people.
Okay.
All right, let's start with the Big Ten. Who wins the Big Ten, who is a contender, and who might surprise people?
I think Oregon wins the Big Ten. I think the contenders are who probably everybody has. Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan is very, very interesting. See what they do at the quarterback position. I think they're going to be an even smushier version of the team that they were last year. Iowa on the periphery. Iowa's kind of the inverse of LSU. If the offense is just a little bit better, they'll be a much better team.
Right.
Even though they won a decent amount of games the year before, LSU is just the exact opposite of that. But outside of that, I don't think there's really any legitimate contenders to win the league. As far as teams that could surprise some people, man, I think Rutgers is really interesting just because of their schedule. Greg Schiano seems like he's the only one in the universe that can win at Rutgers.
Right.
I think they're going to be a little bit better offensively, and Schiano's been pretty good defensively. Just the problem with them is depth. That's where it gets Rutgers, especially up front. Same place it gets a lot of these teams that struggle in these bigger conferences. You may be able to get a couple receivers, maybe a quarterback, a couple good DBs, and a linebacker. But as far as being 2-3 deep at the line of scrimmage on both sides, it's just a tough deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that Oregon, does Dan Lanning finally have Oregon big enough and strong enough and deep enough up front on the offensive and defensive lines to compete with the 2 or 3 best teams in the country?
Without a doubt. I think Oregon's the top 3 roster in the country with Georgia and Ohio State.
Okay. That always has seemed to be where they have fallen short in years past, but Dan Lanning seems to be building an SEC quality roster out west.
Yeah, which is a great plan.
Absolutely. What's happening at USC? Is USC going to make it in the Big Ten, or are they going to crash and burn? Or they're going to be changing out coaches in a couple seasons?
Well, I'm never going to doubt Lincoln on offense, but I'm a firm believer in if you show me who you are enough, eventually I'm going to believe you. And he did get rid of Alex Grinch, the DC that's been along the ride with him for a while. So we'll see how that adjustment is. He brought in Lynn from UCLA, who did a really good job with their defense. Actually brought in North Dakota State's head coach, Matt Ince, to coach the linebackers. So he's trying to make a difference. But, man, I'm just worried it's an identity thing. Right, this is kind of who Lincoln. What he kind of gives off as a head coach is we're going to be like the Globetrotters. We're going to try and score a lot of points, not play a lot of defense, and hope you have one more point than you at the end of the day. So I look at USC's style of play and their recruiting base, and I don't think that's exactly the greatest fit in the world for going up to Iowa in November and going up to East Lansing, in late October, and it's kind of a smash mouth league. So no, I don't think USC is going to prosper in this. The way I feel like Oregon's built for this conference and USC's not. So they gave Lincoln pretty much everything, a jet, star and roll in the new Entourage series, whatever. But they don't start tackling people, it's not going to matter. And it starts week 1 in Vegas against LSU.
And the thought of USC playing in the snow at Camp Randall Stadium, that gives off college football 25 vibes. That doesn't even seem real.
No, and that's why this conference realignment is so fascinating. We're going to have scenarios that we've never had before at the end of the year. It's different if, USC was playing Michigan game 1, right? In like Dallas or something. We see that all the time, or in, the Chick-fil-A kickoff or whatever, but most time those games are in domes. Are there earlier in the year where the weather's better? We're talking about going there in late October, in early November when it's looks like the day after tomorrow outside up there. So I don't think it's a great fit.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Big 12, who wins the Big 12? Who are contenders and who is a surprise team?
Well, this one's an interesting conference. There's a lot of teams I think that can win it. I've got Utah winning it, but I think Oklahoma State's obviously a contender. Kansas State's a contender. Arizona's a contender. I think Kansas is a contender. You can make a good case that even teams like West Virginia, Iowa State, and UCF are contenders. That's why I think the Big 12 may end up being the most fascinating conference out of all of them. I got Utah winning it because I think they got a little bit more of everything than everybody else. I mean, Oklahoma State's a one-trick pony. Now, it's a hell of a trick. Ollie Gordon's a really good player. They returned a bunch of people. But that defense has to be better for them to do the things that people want to do out there. So the Big 12 is going to be fascinating, but give me Utah and about half the conference to be contenders.
Absolutely. I think it will be the most interesting conference to keep up with, certainly in the Power 5. And I agree about Utah and Oklahoma State. I mean, they can make a run at it if there aren't enough defenses that can stop the run in that conference, which, we'll see. In years past, that's been enough to win some years. How about the ACC?
Man, I've got Miami winning the ACC, the contenders. I think Florida State, obviously, Clemson, obviously. Their skill position has got to really start coming through around Cade Klubnik, and Garrett Raleigh's got to figure out his play calling in the red zone. But Clemson should still be pretty good on defense. I think the offensive line is going to be fine. As far as the other teams that can win it, when you look around that league, I'm very high on SMU. And if you watched the show yesterday or looked at the internet, you've seen that probably. I may be the only person that's picking SMU to make it to the ACC championship game, and that's okay. But outside of that, looking around the rest of the league, there's some very interesting teams, right? We've had a lot of movement in that conference, but I would say to me, it's Miami, it's Florida State, it's SMU. There's a couple others that I think could maybe make a push. Georgia Tech's very interesting. We're going to find out about them this weekend against Florida State a little bit in Game 1 up there in Ireland. But I think it's pretty much a 2-horse race, maybe a 3-horse race.
Yeah, and I'm really interested, Jake, to see if Dabo Swinney can recapture things at Clemson. He refuses to be in this new modern era of college football and to participate in the transfer portal. I don't believe in SMU. I think they lost a lot of talent this last season to the NFL draft, and I think DJU at quarterback, the U stands for usually inconsistent.
I'm guessing you mean FSU,
yeah.
Not SMU.
Yeah.
I was going to say, well, golly, because they return a ton of people. If they lost guys to the NFL, I totally spaced them out. But Florida State did lose a battalion to the NFL, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think you are the only one picking SMU to do that well, although I could see it. I do think that they're building something special over there in Texas.
And the schedule.
The
schedule works out for them beautifully.
It does. So how about the SEC?
Yeah, we're breaking that one down today. I'll give you a little sneak preview. I've got Georgia winning it. I've actually got Georgia playing Ole Miss twice. I think Georgia goes 11-1, loses at Ole Miss, then plays them again in the SEC championship game and beats them. As far as contenders, I mean, you're going to have Georgia, you're going to have Bama, you're going to have Texas, you're going to have Ole Miss. I think Missouri's interesting, even though they just lost a big piece on defense, unfortunately, with Darius Smith, the Georgia transfer, a guy they were really counting on. You look around the rest of the conference, I think Auburn is going to be better. I think they're going to be around 8-9 wins, somewhere around there. Tennessee, I've got having a pretty decent year. I think Nico is, out of all the young quarterbacks, I think he has a chance to be the best. Texas, I'm not as high on Texas as some other people are. I think they go up to Ann Arbor week 2 and lose. But I tell you what, man, I think there's more teams in the SEC this year that can legitimately win the conference than in any year I can remember recently.
Same. I don't remember a year where it was this wide open, even with teams like Georgia who are so talented and so good and have the best coach in college football. 4 predictions that I have for the SEC that I'm putting on this episode, I want to get your quick reaction to. Number 1 is that Bama loses 3 games this year. Number 2 is that Auburn finishes with more than 8 wins. Number 3 is that 3 coaches are fired at the end of the season. And my 4th prediction is that Oklahoma finishes in the bottom 6 of the league. What do you say about those?
Man, I agree with about 90% of those. I've got Bama going 10-2.
Okay.
I've got them getting to double digits, which means they're, a really good chance they're going to be in the playoff. As far as the 3 head coaches being fired, I mean, that would have to be Pittman. That would have to be Billy Napier and Shane Beamer, I'm guessing, right?
Could be, yeah. Those are the 3 that I was looking at, with the possible exception that if Oklahoma were to crash and burn, depending on how bad it was, would they take a look there as well?
Well, they just extended Venables another 3 years. added some more money to a pretty hefty buyout, and coming off a 10-win season last year, first year in the SEC. I've got Oklahoma at 6-6, so
Okay.
I don't think they'd fire them, but I mean, we know the standard at Oklahoma. The heater would be turned up, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And lastly, before we let you go, Jake, I had sent you our In the Shed with Wes preseason top 25 poll. The way that we do it on this show is I put together a preseason top 25 poll, and then I don't touch it for 4 weeks. We let the first 4 weeks of the season go, and then we start adjusting things week to week after that. My top 10 looks like this. Number 1, Texas. Number 2, Georgia. Number 3, Oregon. 4, Ohio State. 5, Ole Miss. 6, Notre Dame. 7, Tennessee. 8, Alabama. 9, Oklahoma State. And 10, Utah. Tear me to shreds.
Man, I don't think that's awful. I don't believe in Texas that much. I'm worried about Quinn Ewers' health with the schedule they play in the SEC. I know Arch is behind there, but Arch is still unproven. I don't care what anybody says. The defense, to me, losing what they lost to the NFL, I know it's Texas. They got some studs. Losing Bo Davis, I think, hurts the defensive line coach more than what people think to LSU. But you can make a legitimate case with Sark and what they have coming back and kind of their ascent in that schedule that Texas should be there. I mean, I don't think I've got Utah way higher than a lot of other people do. I actually got them at 6 in my preseason rankings, but I don't think that's out of bounds or anything crazy, Wes.
Well, I know I will get ripped to shreds by Bama fans, especially being that I root for the other team in the state.
Yeah.
But I think Georgia is by far the most talented roster still. I believe in Oregon. I think Texas has problems in the defensive secondary especially, but I expect their defensive line to be very good with Sark and Ewers on offense and all the talent they have there. I'm just kind of riding with them, at least going into the season. With Ohio State, my main question is like you said, at quarterback. I think Will Howard is very talented. But in games against the very best teams in the country, with the pass rush bearing down, is he going to be able to stand in the pocket and deliver consistent darts and dimes? I'm not so sure.
Yeah, that's the biggest question with Will. Ohio State's going to be good enough to line up and just be better than people probably 90% of the time. But in those 10% of games that Ryan Day is getting paid to win, those 10% of games that they gave him $20 million of NIL to be able to get over that hump, including Michigan, which they get at home this year after Michigan lost all they lost. Can Will Howard, like you mentioned and like we've talked about on the show, make those 3 to 5 throws where he's got to thread the needle? Are those 3 to 5 throws where, he can't just run away and extend the play and scramble to his right and find a guy open? Can he be on time? Can he deliver it in tight coverage? Those are questions I don't think we know yet.
Yeah, I agree. And it's going to be a great college football season. I haven't been this excited about college football in a long time. Jake, tell people where to find your show.
It's really easy, man. Whether it's YouTube, if you watch, if you listen, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, it's Crain Company, Crain and Company. We're diving deep into it. Won a lot of money betting in college football last year, so if you like that aspect as well, which I'm sure you probably like making money, hoping we can do that again this year. Come and check us out.
Well, Jake, you have been incredibly generous with your time. You have 5 times the social media following that we do, 1,000 times the subscriber base, probably 1 million times the listeners, and yet you've been in the shed with us. You've given us your time. Love your insights into college football. Big fan of your show. Listen to it all the time, especially in the car line, picking up my daughter from elementary school. I choose that over Feinbaum or any other show when it comes to sports. Thank you so much for being on our show today.
Well, Wes, number one, man, anything I can ever do, rooting for you. I think this show's going to take off. I'm always down to come on, and yeah, man, it's we have a good time. We love what we talk about. We're not always going to agree, which is good. Dissent moves us forward. If we all agreed, this would be so boring. It's going to be a crazy college football season, man, and I really appreciate it.
That's all for this week. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I can't either. It's back in the house and out of the shed for me. Thanks again for listening to episode 76. Make sure to subscribe, like, share, and review. It really does help. If you have any paranormal experiences, opinions about sports or politics that you'd like to share, you can email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air. Join our membership club at patreon.com/intheshed4. Look for us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Pandora, the Good Pods app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to follow us on X at InTheShed4. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at In The Shed with Wes Anderson 6670. And tune in again next week when we hit the headlines, talk some college football, and investigate together the incredible story of the Kandahar Giant. This has been In The Shed with Wes Anderson, the best news show in the land covering politics, sports, and the paranormal. Have an adventurous and fulfilling weekend. I'll catch you tools later. Peace out, Boy Scouts. Meemaw, we made it!
We sure did.